Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Contracts Unfolded. Currently, we are discussing the boilerplate clause series, and today we will talk about a clause which will come to the rescue during the time of wars, during the time of large scale disruptions, or during some uncertain events which are beyond human control. And that clause is force majeure clause. So let's begin this by understanding what exactly is a force majeure clause. So a force majeure clause basically deals with extraordinary events that are outside the control of the parties, and those events basically prevents the parties from performing their contractual duties or contractual obligations. In simple terms, this clause answers a very basic question. If something completely unexpected happens and a party cannot perform their part of the contract, will they be still held liable for that or not? And this clause usually lists certain type of events such as war or external aggressions, natural disasters, government actions, strikes or labor disruptions, pandemic or public health emergencies. Now, if one of these events occurs and it genuinely affects performance, then the affected party may be temporarily excused from performing their contract. Because the idea behind including this clause is the fairness. Because contracts are written considering normal business situations or normal business circumstances. And this clause recognizes those circumstances or situations which sometimes gets completely out of the control of the parties, and therefore the parties are excused for those circumstances. Now let's understand why this clause matters so much. First of all, under normal circumstances, failure to perform a contract is called as breach, and the other party is liable to claim damages, the other party is liable to claim injunction, specific performance, or even penalties. But force majeure clause recognizes that certain events are beyond the control of the parties, and therefore the repercussions should not be applicable. And we can see a very practical example of this in the current geopolitical tensions going on between Iran, Israel, and America. Now we all know that Strait of Hormuz is one of the most important routes for global oil supply, and a significant portion of the world's oil passes through this narrow channel. Now if the tension rises, then the oil supply may slow down or may completely stop because of security risks. Now imagine a simple contractual situation. Let's say a oil trading company has agreed to deliver crude oil to a specific location at a specific date. Now, because the tension rises, the oil trading company or the vessel of the oil trading company could not pass through the Strait of Hormuz, and therefore it could not deliver the shipment on time. Now, without force majeure clause, this delay could be treated as a breach of contract. But if the contract clearly contains a well drafted force majeure clause, which includes events such as war, armed conflicts, or disruptions of ship routes, then the supplier may be temporarily excused from performing its services. And this is exactly the kind of situations this clause is meant to address. Now, let's understand what happens during a force majeure event. So, most of the force majeure clause follows a similar structure. First, the affected party must provide a notice to the other party saying that a force majeure event has occurred. Secondly, the party must demonstrate that the event has actually delayed performance or caused to stop the performance. And thirdly, the contractual obligations are suspended during the force majeure event time period. Now, it simply means that the contract does not automatically terminate or ends, but the services are stopped until the situation becomes normal. Now, many contracts also includes a time threshold limit. So it says in case the event continues for a period of 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days, then either of the party can terminate the contract. And this is important because it prevents the parties from getting indefinitely stuck to a contract or an agreement, even when the parties knows that the services cannot be performed or the deliveries cannot be delivered for a prolonged period of time. Now, even though this clause is very common among the contracts, I still see some of the times it is very poorly drafted. So here are some of the common mistakes that you should avoid while drafting a force majeure clause. So the first mistake is drafting a very vague language. So if your clause says something like this, events beyond reasonable control, then it is a very vaguely defined clause, and in the future the parties can dispute whether a certain event would qualify for a force majeure event or not. Another mistake is unclear notice requirement. Now, a proper force majeure clause always mentions that the notice should be provided to the non-affecting party within a reasonable time limit. Now, if your clause does not mentions anything related to notice and you do not provide a notice to the non-affecting party, then the protection of this clause is already lost. And the third and final mistake is silence on payment obligations. It is important that you clearly write whether the payment obligations shall also be paused or the invoices will be raised and the payment shall be paid even though the events are force majeure events. So this was all for this video. If you find this video helpful, then consider subscribing this channel and sharing this video with people who also work with contracts. Thank you so much for your time.